values to valued culture? Here is your host, Will Scott, interviewing another CEO about leading culture in their company.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, and today we have Will Scott, founder of Culture Czars, and he also owned and grew two software companies, one of them over 20 years old. He talks to CEOs on this podcast that care about corporate culture. His purpose is to help CEOs create environments so that employees love where they work and why they work there. Today's episode is brought to you by the Culture Fix. This is Will's life work on culture, all boiled down to its essence. Go to culturezars.com. You can pick up a workbook and you can start implementing a great culture in your business today. He's been sought after by many companies to create this book. So he finally did, and it really helps to bring core values alive in a graphical way. So Will, in this episode, what we wanted to talk about was, is it ever appropriate to change your core values? Can they change, or are they something that should really be set in stone and they shouldn't change?
The answer to that, John, is of course, it depends, as is so many times the answer. There are times when it is appropriate to change or modify or modernize core values. And the more the organization has changed, or the people have changed, or the mission has changed, the customers have changed enough, if businesses have really pivoted and changed enough, then probably those folks are going to look at the core values and then feel like those don't really fit. And it is appropriate to update them or change them. Not necessarily all of them, but at least some of them.
Right, yeah. You think about it, like a company that's been around for a long time, like Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, started as a textile mill, became a diversified holding company, so a very different type of company. Another example is your own company, Ware Systems, right, which is 20 years old. And we were talking beforehand, you said some of their core, or at least one of their core values has changed, right?
Yes. So that was a company. We actually made a major pivot, a few years ago. But also, I think a lot of the employees have changed. So a lot of the leadership changed. We kind of moved really from an older sort of consulting-based software company to a much leaner SaaS-based, company with completely different technologies and platforms. It's just so much changed in that space since the 90s that it was appropriate for us to update the values. And some of the values still had the same kind of ethos to them, but it was appropriate. And the company is thriving now in its new form under the new leadership and with a lot of new people on the team. Although one of the things I'm proud about with Ware Systems, though, is some of the first employees we hired are still there 20 years later.
Wow.
But they and part of our values was definitely being able to change with the times and the technologies. So
right, and you were founder and CEO, no longer CEO anymore, and it was okay. It's okay to you that the core values changed, even though you're not, because you're not running the joint anymore. So you're like, okay, well, it's new people, they decide.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, of course, my blessing was asked for and given. It was done, but it was done with agreement in that way.
Good.
But yeah, I think that's a case of where it is appropriate at times.
Right.
One of my clients, so of course, one of the reasons that I let go of that company and let that have different leadership is because I'm pursuing my own passion now in Culture Czars, where we want to help people love where they work and why they work, and conquer this malaise that exists, where the majority of employees still today, with all the power, all we've learned about leadership and all the powers of communication we have, still the majority of employees are disengaged at work and therefore not productive and not giving of their best. And I think it's just a big waste, not only for the company and for the bottom line, but for those folks that are spending so much of their lives in a job where they're not really loving it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I love doing what I do today. But another one of my clients, they asked for a refresh of their values. They had, I think it was 7 or 8 values, and began with a all company survey, did some interviews, then did some workshops, and we managed to get those 8 core values down to 3. Now, 3 is more memorable. People can recall them better, and they are sort of, unique and very personal to the company. But it is important too that under each of those values you have some descriptive behaviors so that folks know what we mean by those values.
Right.
So that's another case where I believe change was appropriate. They just were looking at them themselves and not feeling that they were as good as they could be. So,
right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, speaking of memorable, I was shocked. I was recently at a conference, and I sat down next to someone who works at Amazon, still works at Amazon, or did at the time. And we were talking about core values, and he mentioned that Amazon has 14 core values or core principles, which they live by. And he said he thinks every Amazon employee can recite them by heart. And I said, prove it to me. So I hand him a piece of paper and tell him to write it out. And I was shocked when he wrote out all 14 without cheating, didn't even look at his phone or anything. And, so that's an example where you've got a company that's got a lot of different core values, nowhere near 3 or 4. I don't know how you remembered them all.
No, I don't either. I'm very surprised to hear that. It's one of the things that I test all the time, and I find I've never found an employee that could recount 14 values. So that's amazing. Yeah. And a big credit to Amazon, and a big credit to the leadership over there, and the culture that they're able to do that. In my experience, people that are able to do it have come up with some kind of way of remembering, or some kind of mnemonic, or some kind of way of prompting them,
Right.
But no, that's a great story, and all full credit to them. I do generally recommend to have a smaller number of core values because they're just more manageable and less unwieldy.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, another company is Uber. Now, Uber recently changed its core values as a result of some of the little scandals that it had around its culture. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and they did, I think, have a refresh and a look across all the values, but they didn't change them all. As far as I remember, they did add one, which was around diversity and kind of acceptance and equality, because some of the behaviors that got them some bad press, were not like that. So by having that value and really living up to it, they will end up with a better culture, in my opinion, certainly a stronger culture, and it will be more diverse and more respectful. One of the most memorable values they had, which served them well, I guess, as they were growing fast, was this one of toe stepping. And toe stepping was designed to be a core value that meant, sort of step on the other guy's toes, like don't be afraid to challenge and push new ideas and new concepts through. But it ended up being people sort of invading other people's personal space and some inappropriate contact and comments and things like that. So they actually completely removed toe stepping from their core values. Yes, and this is well documented. Actually, in one of my blogs, but also on the internet. And they actually the old CEO was replaced by a new CEO. One of the first things he did was look at core values, and he looked at them because they did bring in consultants who kind of looked at the scandals and the behaviors, and they did determine that some of the issues were because of core values that were sort of steering people a little awry. Right. So an interesting story.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Well, we've been talking about, is it ever appropriate to change your core values, and if so, when? Will, as always, enlightening and interesting. Culturesars.com is the website, so if you want to learn more about how to improve your culture, how to build a great culture, how to bring your core values alive within your company, go to culturesars.com, and we'll be back soon with another episode talking about how to improve your culture. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at culturesars.com, and we'll see you next time.